Welcome everyone to our tonight's town hall meeting on the GRS nutrition program. We have a number of different things to talk about in relation to the nutrition program tonight, but the main reason why we are talking about this tonight is because of the impact of 2023 spring legislation coming from the state of Minnesota. And so I'm going to speak about that. I'm going to speak about what our existing nutrition program looks like, and I'm going to speak about some decisions that we have to make as a community coming up in the near future, and sort of also talk a little bit about pros and cons of those decisions. And then at the end, I'm going to have a Google form survey that all of you can fill out to give feedback to us directly, because well, I'll explain why at the end, why I want to do it that way. But specifically, there will be a survey at the end of tonight's presentation as well. All right, so to get started, why is this coming up now? Why is this a discussion that is coming at us right now? Is that on March 17th, Governor Walz signed a new into law, a bill providing free breakfast and lunch for all Minnesota students at all schools participating in the federal lunch program. So we are very excited about that bill in a lot of ways across the entire state of Minnesota. And the governor had some words to share about it that I thought I would start with tonight to give some context to why this bill exists and where it's coming from. So the governor said, "As a former teacher, I know that providing free breakfast and lunch for our students is one of the best investments we can make to lower costs, support Minnesota's working families, and care for our young learners and the future of our state. This bill puts us one step closer to making Minnesota the best state for kids to grow up in, and I'm grateful to all the legislators and advocates for making it happen." Peggy Flanagan had similar but different comments and said, "As someone who grew up with a different colored lunch ticket, I know there are too many children who go hungry at schools and experience the shame in the lunchroom. By providing free breakfast and lunch to all students, we're removing stigma in the lunchroom, helping families' pocketbooks, investing in the health and well-being of our children, and ensuring that no student goes hungry for any reason. Today is a really good day for our students and families." So, will lunch be free at GRS is the question. And the truth is that it's a little more complicated than that. We're going to have to make some decisions in the near future that lead to that get us to a point where we can make the decision as to whether or not we're going to join the federal lunch program. And there's some consequences to that in both sides of the pros and cons. And so I want to present those tonight. But I want to start by offering some context. And at any point, Mel, if you want to jump in and clarify something I'm saying or add more context, feel free to just let me know. So the history of the nutrition program at GRS is actually pretty complicated, and I don't know all of it, only having been here for just short of 2 years now. But this context, I hope, will be helpful to all of us as we think about the nutrition program at GRS. So first of all, we believe in the absolute importance of good nutrition program that students can rely upon to reach their full potential. We know that students are learning better if they are eating well. And we know that that is such an important thing here to us at Great River that we've invested in it financially in a number of different ways. And so we had a federal lunch program previously. And we, at that time, this was a number of years ago now, we catered out food. And honestly, what I've heard about the food that we catered out is that the quality of the food was such that the students were not eating it. So then we built our kitchen, going back again a number of years here at this point. We built our kitchen to make a change to that. And also we built our kitchen specifically to create a learning space in the school so that our kitchen was a school kitchen, certainly, and serving the students food, but also an opportunity for students to learn culinary arts. And our kitchen is designed in that way, in many ways. With that decision, we decided to stop participating in the federal lunch program. You'll see why as we get into the pros and cons of the decision-making process now as to why that decision was made. But it was not an easy decision in many ways, and it was a decision that I believe at the time was made in order to prioritize building a really strong nutrition program at Great River. To be clear, we also honor students who qualify for free and reduced lunch at Great River. So we have a commitment to feeding every student who asks for food, and no one is turned away. And that's been true, even though we don't have a federal lunch program that reimburses us for the cost of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. We still honor free and reduced lunch, and which is part of the reason that the program does cost the school some money. But just part of the reason. But we've created a program that's dedicated to healthy from scratch meals every day. And so that is different than what you see at other schools. The type of food we're serving is different than what you see in school lunch programs generally. And also we have a culinary arts program, which was part of the intention behind designing our kitchen the way it is and the spaces generally the way they are. So I have a short video here for you all to watch related to what our lunch program looks like right now. So give me just one moment to make sure the sound is set up correctly. Okay, so this should work correctly. Mel, interrupt me if the sound is, if you are finding that the sound is hard to hear, and I'll reshare with the and try again with the sound. So let's see how this goes.
At Great River School, we believe that food is a connector. The food we eat not only nourishes our bodies, it reminds us of people and places. It connects us to the land. The kitchen at Great River School works hard to serve healthy, delicious, plant-forward lunches from scratch every day. The menu highlights a wide variety of meals made with sustainably and locally sourced ingredients when possible. This year, the kitchen has opened its doors to GRS students through the Lower Adolescent Culinary Arts course. This class has a mission to teach 7th and 8th grade students lifelong cooking skills while thinking critically about nutrition, sustainability, and food systems. In the kitchen, students practice their knife skills, learn how to read a recipe, and experiment with the science of cooking. While practicing these skills, the students help the kitchen staff prepare ingredients for school lunch. As they learn to mince onions, chop carrots, and prepare salad dressings, the students improve their kitchen confidence, support the kitchen staff, and serve the broader school community. Outside the kitchen, the culinary arts students study nutrition guidelines, food sovereignty, and the relationship between climate change and the food system. In its pilot year, the course has been a success, and the students have enjoyed learning in the kitchen.
George, and I'm in 8th grade.
I'm Honesty, and I'm in 8th grade. And I learned some new knife skills that I had known before.
We do different things on a week by week basis. Like one week we made soups, another week we made bread.
We did this heat transfer thing with marshmallows, and that was super cool because we learned different ways to cook with marshmallows and the different ways that heat can go into things.
It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. The two go hand in hand, and I think I will probably be cooking more as the time goes forward.
This kitchen classroom program is designed to provide lessons about our complex foodways while teaching students essential culinary skills and providing them an opportunity to learn through service. Because Great River School's lunch program is not federally funded and not subject to federal restrictions, students are able to learn in this hands-on environment. However, this means the kitchen needs your support. Signing up for school lunch is one tangible way that you can keep this class running. By purchasing school lunch, you're not only providing your student with a healthy, sustainable meal, you're also investing in experiential education at Great River School.
All right. So I wanted to include that video because it really highlights a lot of the culinary arts program specifically. And I want to be clear as we talk about the possibility of creating a federal school lunch program at Great River, that it would not necessarily preclude us from having a culinary arts program, but it would likely make the culinary arts program looks pretty significantly different, which I will speak to in just a moment. So important to sort of note all of the different aspects that go into our nutrition program at Great River right now. What does our current program look like? So understanding the important role that food plays in our bodies, our friendships, our families, and our relationship with living beings ties our school to the core values to honor all living beings and work towards global peace through education. This is in reference specifically to the idea that we are supporting a healthy and supportive, sustainable food system. And so we define sustainable here at Great River as supporting local agriculture, preparing foods from scratch, focusing on plant-based and whole food meals, and choosing chemical and pesticide-free ingredients. Now, there we go. Some facts about our current program. And these will be important facts as we sort of compare the pros and cons of what it would look like to start a federal lunch program, a federal food program at Great River. So current prices at Great River include 75 cents for milk, 75 cents for fruit. A hot lunch is $3.50. Half sandwich is $2.50, and a full sandwich, a salad, or a wrap is $5. So as you start to think about what it costs to produce the food that we have right now at Great River, you have to think about the fact that a full meal, a sandwich, fruit, and milk is going to cost $6.50, or a half sandwich and a soup and milk. It starts to, it seems at first that you're talking about $2.50 for a half sandwich, but really you're thinking about the full meal. And the cost of these full meals are supporting the Great River staff, are supporting the lunch program, are supporting the culinary arts program. Also, to be honest, the school also invests because of the culinary arts program in part, but also just because of our stress and the importance we put on food program and a nutritious food program. We invest literally about $100,000 a year into our food program, our nutrition program, our culinary arts program. And so it is a pretty significant investment on the school's part to be able to run this program the way that we have been running it.
Hey, David, I just wanted to check in on about a few things.
Yeah,
For
sure.
those who don't know, when that says fruit, we are talking about whole fruits. We wash whole fruits like apples, oranges, bananas, sometimes pears. For our kids, it's never canned, it's never frozen fruit. And that's something that is different in our program. And I know it's been mentioned a few times that we do focus on, for our hot lunches, vegetarian and vegan food. Number one, because, well, it's delicious, but number two, it's cheaper than having meat. The only meat that we serve is in our cold sandwiches. It's turkey, as we are I think you'll come up with this later, but we're a pork-free school. So that is there to support our Muslim and our Jewish community who want to eat with us. We make that distinction. And I just wanted to mention those things because I think that's really important, because it just says fruit, but it really does mean whole fruits.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mel. It's good to have context on all of these sort of facts of how the lunch program runs currently. On average, we're serving about 200 to 300 lunches daily at Great River. We also do serve breakfast to a small number of students. You can tell me, Mel, is it like 20, 30 breakfasts a day?
Yeah, it depends on the day, but because we, I'd say on average, we do under 25, but we've started smoothies on Friday, we make about 150 smoothies on Friday.
Okay.
So
I
for
forgot
breakfast.
about the smoothies. That's right. So now I want to talk a little bit more in depth about what it would mean to start a federal lunch program at GRS. So there are some pros, there are some cons, and some of these pros and cons all need sort of explanation to give you all context as to what it would mean, and why this is a hard question. So the biggest pro for me, of course, is that every student could eat for free every day. Now that means here at Great River, we'd be, aligned with the state, we'd be aligned with what other schools are doing, but also we'd be doing making great strides towards a more equitable program in so many ways, that all of our students could eat and all of our students could eat for free. And so it means a lot to me that, yes, right now our free and reduced students eat for free, of course, as I mentioned earlier. But also there are families certainly that are in a category where maybe they don't qualify for free and reduced, but it's still very difficult for them to afford to participate in our lunch program. And so, or maybe hard to get their kids lunch in different ways. And so the equity factor of being able to be a federal lunch program that supplies free lunch to all students every day and free breakfast potentially too, is really a big point for me and is really important to have said. I also want to say that perhaps the school could actually save money in the long term on a federal lunch program. We're not sure. Not having run a federal lunch program, and for some of the reasons that are listed here as well under cons, we're not actually sure where it would work out in the long run financially for the school. And you'll see why here as I get into some of the cons. One of the cons that we are concerned about is food quality. And so, we would get from the state or federal government, depending on if you were free and reduced lunch or not. We would get from the state or federal government about $3.93 all inclusive per lunch to serve a student lunch. It's less for breakfast, although I should have put that number on here as well. I'm not remembering exactly what it is. So $3.93, when you actually start to compare to what we are spending right now on our school lunches, if you count that as the full meal, including the cost of milk, including the cost of a side or fruit, it doesn't quite compare to a wrap with milk and a fruit at $6.50. So we would have less money literally just less money to spend on each individual meal. Also, we believe, and we're not sure of this, and this is part of why we're having tonight's meeting, is that we believe that we would probably have a pretty significant increase in the number of lunches we'd be producing each day. So instead of 200 to 300 lunches a day, if lunch is free at the school, does that mean that we'll have to produce 500 or 600 or even 700 lunches a day? If that were true, another cost to running this program would be the need to basically refurbish our kitchen in order to be able to actually support the creation of 600 meals a day, 600 lunches a day. We're also a little concerned about serving space. If we are serving 600 students a day, how the serving lines used to work and how challenging it was to get students through the serving lines in a timely manner. This is an issue that came up to me right away at Great River. And I think a family brought it up at a different town hall related to COVID, that they were concerned about the serving lines shortly after I started at Great River, because it was such a time-consuming process to get that many students through the serving lines each day. There are paperwork requirements for the lunch program, it's not literal paperwork, but there's a system called Clicks that we would need to run. And we would need to have the staff in order to do the data input necessary. We're a little concerned about the impacts to the culinary arts program because in order to produce that much food, we may not have the space or capacity to run a culinary arts program in the same way or even close to the same way as we do right now.
David, I think it's also important to mention, especially with the staff that you mentioned, we only have 2.5 people hourly that we run in the kitchen right now. And I don't think that is mentioned anywhere on here. So we do serve about that many students, like David mentioned before, with 2.5 hourly people. So we would need to increase our staff substantially.
Correct. That's definitely what I'm getting to, even beyond the paperwork requirements of increasing the staff in order to be able to use the click system and input all the data that would be necessary. Also increasing the staff just to be able to serve that many meals is definitely an issue. Beyond that, the culinary arts program, you know, we have some concerns about how we train the students, only in that we would have to change the curriculum pretty significantly in order to train the students up front on all of the things that would be legally required for them to participate in a kitchen that's participating in the federal lunch program. We train all of our students in the culinary arts program to do all of that. We just don't necessarily train all of those things before they're allowed into the kitchen, basically. They're learning on the job and through the process. So the curriculum would shift as well. As a bare minimum, I believe that setting up a federal lunch program will probably, even just the application process, they are saying has a 6-month application process. And so it's important to note that this is not something that we're going to get into place very quickly, especially if we need to refurbish the kitchen as well. The time involved in starting a program like this might take us some significant amount of time. When we come to food waste, what we're talking about here, the reason why I put this on here is based some on my previous experience. So if you all may or may not know that I previously ran, this is the 3rd charter school that I've actually run here at Great River. And one of the schools that I ran, Southside Family Charter School, catered in its food every day in the same way that Great River did previously. What that meant was that we basically were paying a catering service $3.93 a lunch to bring in food, and they were paying their drivers, their delivery, their food preparation, their warehouse, you know, all of the materials, all of the goods, everything that went into prepping that food. And the food was of such quality that we really struggled to have the students eat it, to be honest. And they weren't interested in the food. It was unpopular, and we wound up with a tremendous amount of food waste because of it. And so, you know, we don't see a level of food waste on that level or even close to that level at Great River right now with the program that we run. And then we're also concerned about losing some gluten-free, vegan, or vegetarian options based on the ability of us to follow the guidelines and restrictions as they are placed on a federal lunch program. That we, of course, if a student has a medical reason to be gluten-free or something like that, we would do everything we could, but I doubt we would have quite the same selections in the same ways as we have right now running a federal lunch program. So these are the pros and cons. And to be honest, I am struggling to, you know, the part of the reason we are having this meeting here tonight is because it isn't an easy decision. There's a lot of different things that could go potentially into making this decision. And there we go. And I want to give people the opportunity to ask questions. I want to give people the opportunity to offer feedback. And also, after we ask questions, as I said earlier, we're going to have a survey that we would like you to fill out. It's a short survey, and I know people sometimes feel over-surveyed. Also, I know that one of the key questions whenever you have someone fill out a survey is, where does this information, you know, what's going to happen with this survey? Where does this information go? So we're going to be using, as a leadership team at the school, the results of this survey very directly in our decision-making process about how we're moving forward or not moving forward, or sticking with the existing program or initiating a whole new program. And so it's really important to us that you do fill out the survey at the end of tonight, at the end of the session. And so I will give you that link here shortly. But first, let me answer what questions you may have. So, okay. So what percentage of students have access to the kitchen for use in classes? Are culinary arts offered to only 7th and 8th graders, all 7th and 8th graders? Great question. So right now, the 7th and 8th grade elective courses are offered on a rotating basis. And the goal would be to have every 7th or 8th grader have the opportunity to take culinary arts sometime during their 7th or 8th grade year. It's a semester-long course, I believe, right now.
Quarter. We have
Oh,
4
it's a quarter.
classes.
Oh, that's right. It's 4 days a week, but it's a quarter-long class. With the intention of getting a lot of students to be able to participate and move through. But it is a 7th and 8th grade program right now. That doesn't mean that we couldn't necessarily expand it. Last year was really a pilot year for the culinary arts program. And we're this year, building on our successes from last year. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't necessarily look different in the future or be able to offer different opportunities to other students around the school as well to do work in the
Yes.
kitchen.
We in the kitchen do partner with other grade levels whenever possible. We did try and pilot this year with the Blue Heron Bash to have 10th graders have an opportunity to be in the kitchen and have a CAS for a month to come in and do, they made soup and they made cookies for the Blue Heron Bash. So that was the 10th grade opportunity. And we often will have, I think it's called Spring Fling, David, or it's the spring, it's like the choice for a lot of the UA kids to come, and we'll often host a cooking class at the end of the year for the UA. But we are constantly looking for opportunities for the UA students to come into the classroom and into the kitchen and have a classroom of any kind.
Okay. Does the school lunch program break even today? I understand and appreciate the culinary arts program and realize why we may not be able to break out of the education piece. But that is my question if possible. So the school lunch program does not break even today. It is a significant investment on the school's part, both in the nutrition, preparation of the food, the food that we're serving students, and also in the culinary arts program itself and the costs associated with that. So it does cost the school, to be totally transparent, about $100,000 a year that we invest in our nutrition program.
We are, though, constantly working to bring money in. I mean,
yes. And we're constantly looking at those numbers in the context of our finance committee. We're constantly trying to figure out, how to make the program more, financially stable and more of a break-even type program, and working in that direction. We've been talking about it for years. What percentage of families participate in the current lunch program? Doing the math in my head, I think we're at about 25%. What does that sound about right to you, Mel?
I do believe that is correct. And just to touch on that last question as well, I don't think any school program really does break even. I think a lot of school programs do subsidize their lunch programs. Just the nature of food as it is, paying people who are, a living wage to make food and have those things and offer them benefits is a giant part of our $100,000 that we do support for the lunch program. But I just wanted to throw that in there as well. But yes, I believe that is a correct number, David.
How much is the school spending on the current program? Like I said, it's about $100,000 a year. And how much would it be to run a federal program? This is where we're not exactly sure. And I go back to my sort of pros and cons list. If we were to run, if we had to refurbish the kitchen and redesign the kitchen in order to produce more meals, we're not yet sure what the cost of that would be. We are talking to a building management company and sitting down with them and having some conversations about what that cost will be. So we have a number to it, but we haven't gotten that number yet. And so that cost would have to be defrayed over the course of several years. Lunch programs at some schools do break even. It is possible, but a lot of schools, as Mel was just saying, do invest in their lunch programs above and beyond the cost of what they are reimbursed. So it depends on the program. It depends on the free and reduced lunch rates. It depends on what in the past, what people were able to charge families that could afford it. And that would no longer be sort of a factor because we would just get that base rate of that $3.93 a meal. I think it's implicit in your presentation that the new legislation only applies to those schools that run federal lunch programs. Is that right? Yes, that's correct. So I may not have been clear about that at the beginning, but the way the legislation would work is that you would continue to get reimbursed from the federal government for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And then we would get reimbursed for the rest of our students if we are in a federal lunch program through the state funding. But the state funding, the way that the legislation has been set up has been specifically to support schools that participate in a federal lunch program. Do we know what other charters or private schools are planning to do? So yes, great question. I go every week to a charter leader meeting that's run by the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools. And it has been a hot topic at those meetings on several occasions to talk about what to do. A lot of other charter schools do cater their food in from different food providing services. There's a couple different companies that do that sort of catering of food in. And so a lot of charters in the Twin Cities do that. There are a few charters in the Twin Cities that have deals with their local districts. One of my schools that I worked at had a deal with St. Paul Public Schools, and St. Paul Public Schools came in and ran the program, and it was the same food that you would have at a St. Paul Public School then. But St. Paul, to my knowledge, I don't think St. Paul is taking on additional schools, so I don't think that's a pathway that we could necessarily pursue. And I know that it was an issue every year as to whether or not they were going to continue that program. With this last school that I was at was always a sort of running question. The schools that the schools that I have spoken to the leaders at who are making their own lunch on site in their own kitchens are having similar questions to us. So other charter leaders are worried, like, how am I going to afford to renovate my kitchen? How am I going to afford to be able to how am I going to be able to actually produce enough meals to feed every one of my students every day? All of those same cons and questions are going through a lot of people's minds right now. And I don't know that anyone has like a clear solution.
On that topic, David, I think you maybe should mention that because it's not related to enrollment, that it would be like when you were talking about how to get that money, that because it's not related to increasing enrollment, that would be difficult.
Oh, you mean in the conversation we had in relation to doing the renovation? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
we would to do a renovation on the kitchen or something like that. I mean, it depends on what sort of cost we're talking about. Putting in a larger hood, getting warmers, or something more drastic than that. We would likely have to do some sort of capital campaign and or spend money that our building company has saved, which I was hoping to go towards an HVAC renovation. So if we're spending money, it's got to come from somewhere. We can't just take another bond, which is what we did to build our building in the first place, because a bond would be connected with increasing enrollment in some sort of way. So we wouldn't be able to basically get a large loan in order to renovate our kitchen. We would need to figure out where that funding was coming from more directly than that. My kids' prior experience with the federal lunch program at another school required them to take each category of items, whether they wanted them or not. That is correct. That is how the federal lunch program works.
Sorry, you're only reimbursed for the total like meal. So that is absolutely correct. Like they have to take everything on there, and that is where the food waste also came in that David was speaking to earlier, is that everybody has to take the full meal. That's the only way we get reimbursed. So a lot of our meals today, especially for our elementary littles, looks like, 2 fruits or, a cheese stick and a milk, or they supplement with their lunch. And that, I don't believe that would be possible with the federal lunch program.
So yes, I think that answers that question. I missed the beginning of the meeting. Will the state not work with GRS by contributing the amount needed to offset the cost of our meals rather than making it shift over to how other schools operate? I both reached out to the Minnesota Department of Education, and also in working with our school's union, the union also reached out to the Minnesota Department of Education, and someone at the Minnesota Department of Education passed this question on to the legislator who was proposing the bill at the state level. And they basically said they hadn't even really considered the possibility of a school not being in the federal lunch program. It is fairly rare. It isn't something that a lot of schools don't participate in. And so it's sort of the legislators didn't even consider the possibility, really. And so we are stuck with, if we want this funding, we need to participate in the federal lunch program. What percentage of students are eating school lunch currently? Like I said, around 20-25%. It seems that if a significant increase would be expected with the offer of a free lunch, the fact itself indicates the need for a free lunch. I think it's true that, like I was saying earlier, I think it is an equity issue. I think that there are families who would participate in the lunch program if they could afford it. I also think there's a lot of families that when the lunch program is free, that will be really appealing to them, not to be packing a lunch every morning, but to be able to participate in a free lunch program, whether they could afford the current program or not. The current program is not inexpensive to run at the way that we run it. So I think I think you're not wrong, and also I think that it's a number of different factors for different families. Are there any plans to bring back the pre-COVID style of choosing your buffet line, choose your own food, salad bar style food service? At this point, we talk every year about what we're going to do with the lunch program. We were just talking at the beginning of this year about the milk machine. Actually was something that came up. That was a popular thing amongst the number of students, that they could get chocolate milk, I think was what was popular.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly sort of revisiting how we're doing it and what we're doing. I think if we ran a federal lunch program, it likely would be it wouldn't be a choose your own food, because it would be you are served X, Y, and Z in order for us to get reimbursed. But it would be more of a kids waiting in line to get served and then taking a tray of food to either the gym cafeteria to eat, or back to their classroom.
Yeah. I will just say in that, it's a lot of kids especially look at that as the golden years of the lunch program. And to be quite honest, we had 4 people working in the kitchen. We had 3.5 hourly, and we ran our butts off to make that work. And we had about 2 parent volunteers every single day that would come in to support us in that, sometimes more. The reality of that, unfortunately, is that is a very intense way to make food. And it really was not sustainable, especially once we talked about bringing the program back where we taught kids. And so we swapped that style for the option of teaching our kids valuable life lessons about cooking and life skills and such. So.
Sure. Do elementary students have access to the kitchen currently? So the elementary students don't have a class in the kitchen, but I have certainly seen elementary students come to the kitchen and ask for things.
Yeah, yes. The way that the prepared environments are in the elementary is they kind of have a kitchenette.
Right.
And so a lot of them have the opportunity to bake, and it really is, in the whole Montessori style, they get to choose. So we've had kids make pies, they make cakes. A lot of times if they need something from us, they'll ask ahead of time and they'll plan it out. or they'll ask to bake something in our oven and we'll work with them there. So they often do make their own food in their classrooms. And then if they need anything from the kitchen, we do work with them to make that happen. But they get to choose. So if they want to do it, they get to do it. It's kind of how it works.
Is there an opportunity to subsidize the current high quality food program with state dollars? So I tried to ask this question. Basically, would we be able to accept all the state funds, follow the restrictions of the program, and then also still basically charge a small fee to families to make up the difference for families that could afford it? And that is in my understanding is that's in direct violation of the restrictions that come along with the federal lunch program. So you're not allowed to charge above and beyond. Like it's kind of tricky because the program is changing. But in the past, the families, you could charge above and beyond for families that were not free and reduced lunch, that weren't being subsidized. And so that was possible in the past, but now that there's a set amount, that $3.93 per lunch, they're saying no, that you can no longer charge more than that $3.93. Basically, that's what the amount that is being reimbursed. It is a very pivotal time for this type of program at GRS and statewide. This is a bill that passed the state government demonstrating its importance for food and nutritional equity and inclusion of all students. Absolutely. I agree with you. And that is why I think it's such an important conversation for us to be having, because of the equity and inclusion of all students question. Would we remain a pork-free school if we join the federal lunch program? This is something that Mel brought up the other day. I actually don't know. I was under the opinion that the programs that I've worked with in the past were pork-free programs, but Mel, you thought differently. So I'll let you speak to that if you have other information.
We as a school, so this is something that we could work towards, but I will tell you that pork is very cheap.
Right.
And I think, this is the issue with having that limitation on having how much money we can buy for things. It does lower the quality of the ingredients that you can get even with meat. And pork again is a pretty cheap product. And so a lot of the recipes, a lot of the schools that do the National School Lunch Program do include pork for that reason. Now, I was talking to my coworker Julie, and she has said that there's schools that she knows of that are working towards being pork-free, but that doesn't mean that they're a pork-free school or a pork-free kitchen. So that means that they probably have a day where it's pork-free. And I do know that, depending on your faith and how you practice your faith, whether it be Muslim or Jewish or however you choose not to eat pork, if that's okay, then you do it. But that's a very personal choice that people then make. I would say that it is a huge, that's why we only have turkey. That's why we only bought chicken. We chose pretty high quality chicken when we did do it. So, that's one of the reasons we only have those those ingredients, is because of the cost. So,
yeah. I'd like to point out that it is 7 o'clock. We got started a little late, and so I'm willing to stay and answer some more questions and continue the recording to try to get at a lot of the questions. But I do understand if anyone has to leave because it is 7 o'clock. I apologize again for us getting started late and all the technical issues we had. I haven't had a webinar require a password in the past. And so that was a setting that was accidentally included when we set this webinar up tonight. It wasn't how we normally do things. So I apologize for starting late, but let me keep answering a few more questions and going a little longer. And anybody that can stay is certainly welcome to. So there are a lot of funding grant opportunities around this type of lunch program that GRS offers. I know that there are funding and grant opportunities that we've been looking in a range of different ways, and I'd love to hear more about that, Kate. So if you know of any specific ones, I'm sure the foundation could be tied to it specifically. For those of you who don't know, Kate works for the foundation as well. So I'd love to talk to you more about that. Is there an opportunity to also rethink the menu? We'd love to support the school nutrition program, but the food is spicy and unappealing to the kids. I can see that it's hard to offer the widest selection of different things that a lot of the little kids in particular necessarily would find, you know, as appealing as maybe other things. But we do rethink the menu on a regular basis. It is something that we are constantly working and working towards. And so any feedback that you have about the menu, we would love to hear that as well. You could include that in the survey as well.
Yeah, and we definitely do take feedback from families all the time and from our kids in line. And I know that that is a personal message, and I'm not trying to. There, you know, it's really great. I thank you for your feedback, and we have a lot of kids that really love the food and like really enjoy the kind of foods that we make. So I appreciate it. I would love to hear more from that person, and let us know exactly what it is that they feel. But I think it is an opportunity to also rethink the menu. I do think that is absolutely true. Like there would be a great rethinking of the menu if we move to the free nutritious lunch program.
I just realized a few people have left already. I'm going to jump and give people a link to the survey, and then I'm going to come back to the questions just to make sure that everybody gets the survey. So when you get these slides, you have a couple options here for the link to the survey. It looks like this. And I am going to share the link in the chat. So you should be able to click on that link in the chat and go to the survey. You can also, from our presentation, hold your phone up to the screen and use the QR code and just jump to it on your phone while you're still watching the presentation. Also, when these slides go out, people will be able to just click on the link. But this is what the survey looks like, and it shouldn't be a terribly long survey. It asks just a couple questions and some both sort of yes and no questions, yes and no, or no, don't know kind of questions, and also some open-ended questions where you can type in a number of different answers and a final open-ended question that says, what other concerns or thoughts do you have? So you could enter whatever you like at that point in the survey. Another question, is from scratch cooking still possible on the National School Lunch Program? That is an excellent question. I like to think that it would still be possible, but it would be within a much more restricted amount of funding, right? So making the same meals that we're making right now would not be financially possible. But would any from scratch cooking happen in the kitchen? I certainly like to think so, but we'd have to work out those details. You know, if you think about what school lunches look like at most schools, that is similar in many ways to what school lunches look like at would look like in most national school lunch program kind of programs. Sorry, just shifting through. No, okay. Could federal money be used, and could Great River invest in the program, or could the federal money be used only per meal and families would have to pay to create a higher quality lunch than could cost less at the current lunch? So we wouldn't be able to charge people above and beyond the reimbursement, is my understanding. But the school still could continue to invest money in the way that it has. I'm just not sure when we think about the math about how much are we investing if you actually count, 500 lunches a day at $2 a lunch over the course of 165 school days. I'd have to pull out my calculator to figure out how much we would have to invest to make up the difference. But I can do that, and I will be doing that. So since the current program requires significant investment, would GRS be able to subsidize a federal program to mitigate concerns about food quality? Same question, we would be able to. I'm just not sure. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, certainly. And also, I'm not sure how far it would go with staffing and renovations and everything else that goes into the costs. So would accepting federal money affect students' ability to participate in culinary arts? So as I spoke to a little bit earlier, if we are producing that many meals a day, we might not have as much capacity for having students in the kitchen because of the just quantity of the space and the quantity of food that was needing to be produced by the professionals who are in there. And also it would change the curriculum pretty significantly because of the way the students would need to be trained in order to participate in supporting a federal lunch program. They would basically need the same training in the same way that all of our professionals in the kitchen have before they were even able to go into the kitchen and do anything. So it just gets a little tricky to figure out the logistics of. Will staff be able to eat? Will they be able to eat for free, or will they be able to pay? So my understanding is that they will have to pay. The free lunch program will not reimburse food for staff, but I think they still will be able to pay and eat, to the best of my knowledge. How is food waste measured and compared? I know our kids haven't generally eaten the majority of school lunches, which is difficult when we do pay for a lot of them. So how is it measured and compared? I mean, that's an excellent question. We definitely, compost a certain amount of food waste each day. And we save things in the freezer, and we distribute things to staff and families when possible. So we do our best to lower the amount of food waste that we possibly would have. It's definitely less food waste than I was seeing per student at a previous school. But that's just because, like I said, the catered food was such that very few students were actually eating it at all. And so we don't see that kind of food waste on that kind of a level.
Right. And our kids get to choose what they want. So in the line, they're not having to take anything. I think that's what, yes, if a kid is taking what they want, there might be times where they take too much and they're not able to fully eat it, or they don't like fully enjoy what they are eating. And so that might be food waste there. But what we're talking about with the National School Lunch Program and the food waste is that they have to take everything that is offered that day. And so that's, I think, the point. There's just that's where, and like David said, we do our best to mitigate food waste everywhere we can within our program.
Yes. Where was I? Can you give examples of what the lunch under the new program would look like? It's hard to know exactly because I still feel like we would do a pretty unique job compared to the way a lot of schools do it. But I think there would be a lot more pre-prepared foods in some ways, like Mel was saying, instead of whole fruits coming into the program, we might have canned fruit coming into the program as an example of what lunch programs do at a lot of schools. Do you have any other thoughts about that, Mel? You might have more ideas.
Yeah, when you're feeding, so I think what we're getting, when you're feeding, say, 600 kids, we're like tripling on some days what we would be doing now. And so there's just not enough time in the day to chop or run food through a food processor to get it to a space where we can cook it. And even like cooking it at a certain point, it just becomes too much food for you to actually cook it. And so a lot of ways to cut that corner when you're feeding that many kids is to buy something that's pre-made. So like a sauce that's pre-made, or a meat product that has been cooked in some way, and then you're just reheating it. You can make sauces and things, but it really does start to limit the effectiveness of your program if you're constantly chopping everything at yourself. And that's where it gets to be like really, that's where the food quality comes in, like David was saying. So you're buying something that's less expensive. It might have additives and things inside it that we don't necessarily add now. And I think I kind of lost the thought, but I think, especially in the first few years, because we are not sure how many kids we would need to feed, we would probably in the first 2 years need to do more of what they're suggesting on the National School Lunch website, or a school. You can look up any school that might work with the National School Lunch Program and see some of their menu offerings. And I would say that a lot of that would be something we would do right away, just so that we could make sure that we feed the kids that we're trying to feed. You know, we have enough food and we're not, because there's such demanding criteria for like how many vegetables, like how many cups of vegetables go into a kid's lunch, how much protein content goes into a kid's lunch. It's very, very specific. And to get your recipes to fit into that is it's a bigger process than just like, that's why they offer a bunch. They offer a bunch of recipes like make this and make this and make this, and they're just ready to go so that you don't have to do all that work. And I think we would grow into something more like what we're seeing now in our program. Does that answer that question, David?
Yes, I think so. As closely as we can answer it. I just realized that I did not hit enter on sending the link to the survey correctly. So I'm sending that again to everyone. So that's in the chat function. If you go down to hit chat, there is now a link that should go to everyone. It says docs.google.com and then a whole bunch of numbers and symbols and stuff to go to reach that survey directly. Or else you can always hold your phone up and click on the QR code and it'll take you there directly too. So it's getting close to 7:15, so we'll probably be wrapping up here shortly, but let me get through a few more questions and see where we're at. Just to clarify, the 393 covers the cost of food, equipment, and staffing, correct? Yes, there's no additional funding beyond the reimbursement for individual meals. And so any additional funding that we needed beyond the 393 would have to come from the school's gen ed budget. Can you tell more about the difference between a teaching kitchen and a non-teaching kitchen in a school setting? Are there differences between a kitchen that cooks on-site versus a catering kitchen? So a kitchen, you can jump in at any time, Mel.
Yeah, I got you, David. How about I just
Yeah.
try it? So our kitchen is set up specifically to have more outlets, so to speak. Like we are able to have our kids be at certain, like, you know, at each table, they're able to like have their own cook stove and such like that. And so our kitchen was literally set up in that way. We have plenty of outlets. We have a few, like we have enough space. It's kind of set up in a way that we have long enough space to make things, you know, and we've kind of continued to modify our kitchen as it was created. Every year we make it more like works for both. So it works for the production that we need, and then it works for the kids to be in there. But a full production kitchen, there is not that way. Like the people prep in one spot, they cook in the other spot, and then they just work on getting food out. And I think going to a National School Lunch Program kitchen with feeding 600 kids, we would have to change our kitchen in such a severe way that it would not be set up that way anymore. And I think, you know, not only the amount of food that we would have to make, we would probably have to have the kids be in a different part of the school learning that if the school still chooses to do that. Like I really don't believe that if we are making 600 lunches a day, that there will be time in our day to fit in that class. So it would probably, if the school decides, be moved to a different part of the school.
It's my understanding that there's not an option to do family style serving with the federal lunch program. That's correct. My understanding as well is that a family style meal, which some schools do, doesn't meet the needs, doesn't meet the restrictions of the federal lunch program. How does staff purchasing lunch factor into the situation? Well, I mean, that would be an additional source of income to the school, although it depends on how many staff do it, and it depends on if staff would continue to do it with different meals offered and what that actually adds up to be. But it would be another source of revenue, it's true. SPPS offers a salad bar, so there can be vegetable choices. Excellent. I haven't been in a SPPS St. Paul Public School cafeteria. I've just been in a couple over in Minneapolis Public Schools. And I do see that they are offering different types of variety than they have offered in the past. Some of those schools are also, you know, much larger schools and also offering getting the support of like district nutritional programs. So not sure how it would play out, but I'd like to be able to offer a salad bar, for instance, to students. Do we know what percentage of families, staff would need to buy school lunch to make it affordable for essentially all families? Or is this reduce the cost due to economy of scale, or is this an impossibility? I guess I wonder with this question if we're talking about with our current program or with a federal lunch program.
I believe that they're asking about our current program.
Our current program, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would so that's what we've always been working towards. I mean, before this legislation came up, we were working towards a way to continually, I mean, it really is a matter of having enough people buy, because we are at our heart supporting our free and reduced lunch families with the food program that we have right now. It is a reason why we have one. We're federally required to have food available for our free and reduced lunch kids. That's correct, right, David? We are federally required to have a way to feed them. And this was our choice, was to offer them this food. And so it has always been a matter of offsetting the cost of our free and reduced lunch kids and families by having people buy. And so, yes, there would be a point where that would work. But I think it's a slow build because we only have enough money for so much within a year. Like, you know, money is always an issue, I think. It's just like slowly growing this program enough so that we can get to where we are going to be financially stable and sustainable.
It feels like access to food is a worthy investment. Absolutely. Who makes this decision in the end? That is a really excellent question. So to be honest, I think that I am going to be looking towards the survey results. I'm going to be looking to the board. I'm going to be looking to the leadership team. I'm going to be looking to the nutrition department for input on this decision. And I don't think it's going to be an easy or non-controversial decision. And so in the end, it will likely come down to me making a decision as head of school. And if we can reach some sort of consensus on it, that would be wonderful. But also we need to make it in a timely way, which can be very difficult to make consensus-based decisions in a timely way. So I think it likely in the end, I will have to take all of that input, make a sort of consultative type decision where I listen to all the different input and decide which direction that we're going. First off, thank you for all your, excuse me. First off, thank you all for helping serve our kids. We're able to continue as we have without federal funding. Yes, we could continue the program in the same way that we have been running it. Hoping so, how could we help keep these wonderful foods and programs running smoothly? If you are invested in the program as it stands, please fill out the survey and tell us that. And also the best way to keep things going with the program as it stands is to buy the food, is to, you know, participate in the program. And so it sounds like you already are, but you should continue to participate. Tess, sorry. I would request that the school take into consideration how many families are struggling to buy food during this time of high inflation. Absolutely. From what I have heard on tonight's call, it sounds like the leadership team has already made up their minds to continue the program as it is. That's not true. I'm feeling like this is maybe a waste of my time to show up tonight. I'm sorry you feel that way. I wanted to really speak to the range of pros and cons in this decision-making process. I have not made up my mind at this time. And also, I guess I want to say about those pros and cons, while there were more cons listed on the list for starting a federal lunch program, I don't think all pros and cons are weighted equally also. And I should have said that back when we were looking at the list. But if you follow my meaning, I think the equity issue is a huge and important and essential issue to this conversation, and shouldn't take away from the fact that it will mean a significant change to our nutrition program if we start a federal lunch program, like a really significant change. And also it is immensely important to me that we serve our families in the most equitable and fair way that we can. So, are the culinary class and this program two separate conversations? Kind of, but they're pretty entwined, I would say, especially because the culinary arts class literally participates in the making of the food that the kids are eating right now. And the space becomes a big part of the issue. And so it is two separate conversations, but there's a lot of overlap, I feel like, and we can't discontinue we can't, in my mind, ignore the fact that the impact to the culinary arts program would be very large as well. I would like to put in a plug for the culinary arts program. My ninth grader was in it last year. She has taught me, her parents, so much since then. I apparently never learned how to chop food safely before. I know exactly what you mean. I have learned some from my children as well. I always ask her guidance now, so I don't, and I slice my fingers a lot less. Thank you for sharing. I think that anecdotes like that are important, certainly, to talk about the value that programs like that are bringing. We are definitely over time. I do want to get to, let me just look at the last of the questions and make sure. A really good one to answer is, what's the timeline for making decisions? I think we need to make this decision relatively quickly, especially if we are starting a federal lunch program, because it's going to take such a significant amount of time to actually initiate, create, refurbish kitchen, get it up and off the ground and started. And so it's not, even the application process takes months, as I said earlier. So hopefully, relatively very quickly. Do the federal state dollars count? The school gets reimbursed for every student, regardless of those students accepting lunch or bringing on their own. So no, the way the money works is that we'd be reimbursed for every meal that we serve, not for every student that we have at the school. Again, I'm just going to sort of more options. Is the culinary arts class required by state legislation? No, it is not. It is just a elective that we offer at the school. Could we opt for only the breakfast funding? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure of the answer to that one, honestly.
I believe we could. I know
Really?
there are places that do just opt in for the breakfast funding. Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I hadn't been asked that before. Will the survey be sent out to everyone or only those attending the meeting? That is probably an excellent way to end the questions. I'm sorry if I did not get to your question at all. I apologize, but the way we're going to next do this is we have made a recording of this presentation. We're going to share the slides and the recording and the survey with the community at large. So people who missed tonight's recording would be able to watch it, or just flip through the slides and take a look at the slides. I would hope they would do one or the other before answering the survey, because it might be difficult to answer the questions without any context. I mean, they're not difficult questions, but it would be good to watch the presentation or read through the slides first. So we will be getting that out shortly. I'm going to talk with Asia, our communications person, in the morning about getting this information out to everyone. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you all coming tonight. I really appreciate the effort and investment in our nutrition program. And I'm really appreciate any input you could put into the survey in particular, because I think it really will help me take a look at what you all's opinions are and what you all's thoughts are before having to make this really big decision for our program. So thank you. Did you want to say any last words, Mel?
I completely agree, David. It's been really wonderful to hear from our community and to answer these questions as they came up. And we really do look forward to all of you filling out the survey. And I'm sure David's already said this, but the survey will be out. We will and we'll make sure, or an effort to make sure everybody gets the survey, even those who didn't participate tonight. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. We'll be signing off here now shortly.